the camera. Yes.
Oh.
So Mark, one thing I wanted to flag, let's see. Okay, there's 6 of us now. 1, 2, 3. Oh wait, we just lost.
1, 2, 3. There are 5 of us.
There were 6 of us. We just lost Audrey again. I think we do need 8 to have a quorum. Is that correct? With 14 members. So
we have 14 members. Then yes, 8 would be the number.
Yeah. So that's where we are.
We have 5.
We have 5 right now.
Okay.
We have 2 because Ira and Seema are both have school meetings, so they're going to be late. So we are in that little bind of waiting for
our quorum. Okay.
And Ben, our new member, cannot join us tonight. He has a work meeting. So we are down a significant number, unfortunately, just due to.
Well, maybe we can convince Stephen to appoint Ben tomorrow.
I think we should be okay, but we're going to be skin of our teeth here.
Well, Bev is here, so is Audrey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Audrey, are you a member of this committee though? I don't think so.
Yes.
Oh, you are? Great.
Yeah.
So we get so lucky. You weren't when I was chair. Well, you bring in Courtney and Blanche, and things get better all real quick, huh?
We need one more person.
Courtney, I can only stay till 8, but I'll be here till 8.
I think we will be, I'm hoping we'll be long done.
Well, then my son thanks you because he does not like mommy's on the thing at night.
My children also have an 8 o'clock bedtime and far prefer it when I am in the room to actually sing the lullaby rather than they're somehow not satisfied by but mommy will come in and kiss you goodnight. You may already be asleep. That doesn't work as well. Definitely.
Didn't work for first either.
Yeah. We should, I believe that we should be getting Kristen. So let me put it this way. If we get Kristen, then she counts. And if we don't get Kristen, then Ben doesn't count and we're still okay. How about that?
Oh.
We have a few more minutes. We'll get somebody else for sure.
So the only thing on the agenda is dealing with the budget priorities?
Oh, the wonderful priorities, yes.
Great. Well, you'll be very disappointed to hear that I have very little to say about them.
But Mark, I don't know what to make of that. I'm stunned into silence.
That's a tease, Mark.
I don't believe it.
I'm sure he means because they're so good now, right?
Yes. Yes.
My bad.
Sorry if that wasn't clear.
Bev, I just want to thank you again. You did a super job. Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're here. We're 8.
There we are.
All right.
Natasha.
Okay. I guess we'll start now, Courtney.
We can start. We have a quorum.
6:33. Okay. Welcome everybody who is here and those who will be coming. And I want to thank Mark for pitching in as he always does with anything at the last minute. He's doing minutes as well as whatever he's doing with Courtney now.
And agreeing to master host as well to launch the whole dang thing. So.
Okay. And we have two new members who neither one is here at the moment. Kirsten Berger, but I remember Kirsten at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, but welcome again. And Benjamin Wu, who we know can't come tonight, welcome. And this is our big night in the sun with our district need statement. Not the statement, because Courtney and I agreed we will not get to that document but I do certainly want to thank Beverly. I remain amazed at what she made out of what I consider very little. So without any, oh, and I think we ought to note, if we haven't already, that we have lost. Lost is not the right word, but Julian
farewell to
has gone on
Bon voyage.
to bigger and other things. I'm not going to say better. For those of you who don't know, Julian is up at Harvard.
College.
Harvard, not just college. He's at Harvard. Okay, but that's not anyway. Okay,
And,
all right.
and welcome back to Amy as well.
I didn't want to give the impression that Amy was away, but Amy, welcome back. And it did occur to me, how old is the young man now?
He's 3.
Is he really? Wow.
Wow. Okay.
He'll pop his head in at some point, I'm sure.
You look great. So 3 years have been good to you. And as I will echo what Courtney said, welcome back.
Thank you much.
Okay, why don't we move on to our item? Do you have an agenda?
Yeah, so we have a few things. So as we mentioned tonight, we have only one task, but it's an important one. We are going to be talking about the budget request. So you should all have received an email with 2 things. The first is the portion of the DNS that has the youth services, the education, and the library section. You should have received that as background context. And again, thanks to Bev for helping to make all of our content a little more concise. And then what we are going to be doing tonight is we have pulled from that document the budget request, and we've sent through a document that has a proposed order. Now, one of the thing we have to do, and Beverly, keep me honest here to make sure I get this correctly, is that we have to approve the order in which the YEL budget requests go to steering for the vote, and then the full board vote will be on the overall priorities in October. So this year, I think one of the things that's really important to keep in mind when we think about the rank order is that we are going to be limited overall to 20 in each category, in each capital and expense priorities. So while all of the priorities are going to be listed on the website, it's going to be really critical to have Audrey, I see your email. I'll send them through. Again, I'm also going to share them on the screen so you can see them.
I'll do that while you're.
Really, thanks, Mark. So it's going to be really critically important that we think carefully about what the top priorities, like the 1, 2, and 3 are going to be that we send to steering. And then the other things that I want to make sure to think about as we think about the rank order are the criteria for this year, which are district needs based on census and city data, constituent input, which we did. All of the information that was in these documents was gathered from conversations with stakeholders at both the district level and the city level. So that part is that piece is already in place. And then other factors like cost benefit relative to other programs, the likelihood of the item being funded without CB7 advocacy. That's the one I've been thinking about a lot. And then close linkage to a policy area that is a high priority for a community board set. So those are kind of the lenses that we want to put over this as we think about the rank order. So I'm going to screen share now so that we can look at the list.
Courtney, this is clarification for me. You did say that the board will put forward 20 items.
So 20 in each category. So 20 capital requests and 20 expense requests.
But each committee will put forth how many?
Well, we're going to put
however many they believe are important to their committee's work.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I add one item to the picture? Before the steering committee on the 30th, earlier in the late afternoon, there's a budget hearing, which is required, where the needs will be put forth and the public will have an opportunity to speak regarding their own views about priorities and the importance and ones that they may be particularly interested in. And that's required, but that will also feed into the work of the steering committee after that in terms of the prioritization.
And where will the meeting be, Bev?
It's on Zoom.
Okay.
Did we get a calendar invite for that? I feel like I've seen something recently on that, but maybe I'm making that up.
I believe that we have.
Yeah, I think that's right. Sounding very familiar. Oh yes, it's on. You're right, on the 30th. I see it. We did. Okay. Okay. So obviously this year, our list. I know a lot of committees' lists look similar. Ours looks different than in previous years, obviously because of what's happening. So we have a lot of expense items and three capital items. So our first item here is maintaining all CB7 schools at 100% of the fair student funding. Several of you may recall we had this issue coming up a lot earlier this year. And some of the federal funds went to supplement in order to ensure that the schools were getting it, and then the state funds as well came through. Number two is providing funding for DYCD. And that's for, yes, Amy, I'm coming to you. And that is for the enhanced funding levels and summer rising and after school programming, and also the funding of the SYEP and Work Grow Learn. Amy, yeah.
So there's two things. One thing is Summer Rising is the summer program initiative in schools, but then you have community center-based camp that needs to be added here, because community-based camps are still running that are not under the Summer Rising initiative.
Perfect.
So that's
I'm
that.
I'm adding this language as we go, by the way, because I agree with you. You're absolutely right.
You know, and it's really not, because if we raise it to pre-pandemic levels, we're talking a funding source that's 2 years old, that does not account for minimum wage going up and all of those things. And it was returned for this year to that, but we don't want to look at FY23 and say, we want FY20 numbers in funding. That's ridiculous. We want higher funding than that. If that makes sense to you.
No, it does. So I want to make sure I understand. So you're basically saying that because of things like cost of living increases, it actually, in order to remain apples to apples, are you arguing for something more than just cost of living increases, or?
I mean, everything goes up depending on where you're at, you know. Community-based centers, their rent goes up every single year, but I just want to be careful in the language we choose, that it doesn't look like we're saying it's okay to be at FY19's numbers when we're talking FY23.
So I'm wondering, I mean, I think the first sentence.
Reference to FY 2019. I see a reference to FY 2022.
FY22 is this year, so that's fine. Those rates were increased, but then change this to the last sentence that says pre-pandemic levels. If we want to keep it there, that's fine, but I wouldn't put it, because pre-pandemic puts us on a budget that will not satisfy the programs anymore.
Right.
Could I jump in on that? Because I agree with the concept completely. And so now it's try to capture it. And one of the things this doesn't, this mentions SYEP and Work, Grow, Learn, but it doesn't mention all the other programs that DYCD funds that we value. Would it be useful to say something like, at the concept I'm trying to come up with is proportionate, that at a proportionally increased funding level, now, Amy, maybe you know, of course you know, but maybe you can help me with, is there a per participant, like there's a per student funding allocation? Is that how DYCD does this? And
yes, but it's different for all of their initiatives, whether it's in school or if it's in a center. SYP gets something different than Work, Learn, Grow gets. So that's hard, but I like this idea of, you know, funding equal to, I wouldn't say funding proportionate, something's got to change, that equals got to go.
yeah.
What
That's
if, I mean,
proportionate to cost of living, I don't know, or
Well-
whatever, something.
It's sort of a purchasing power argument you're making.
yeah,
That we should have essentially the buying power of the current year funded
There you
to
go.
make sure that any increases in costs are funded without a service reduction.
Yeah. So Bev, let's play with that for just one more second, because I think you've got it. So instead of saying enhance, maybe the concept is enhance funding sufficient to, and then what you just said, serve all students or serve all youth and I now have lost what you said, which is bad because I'm taking the minutes.
Bev, say it again. It was brilliant.
To provide the purchasing power to fund all youth that have been served this year, ensuring that any increase in cost is in fact provided.
And this year, you mean 2022?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, 2022, the budget's
No.
done. It was handed to us on July 1. We're
Yes.
talking future
Yeah.
budget. So we're talking
Yeah.
FY 23.
No, I know.
What if we, all right. So why don't we do this? What if we bundle? I mean, if we're going to say fund, can we just list them and then tag it with the funding should be sufficient to blah, blah, blah? Okay.
Yeah, the only other thing I'm worried about is that participation in some of these programs has waned during the pandemic. And if we limit ourselves to the number of kids being served in fiscal 21 or 22,
Yeah.
we might be underselling. Amy's shaking her head no, so maybe that's not a problem.
No, you're correct. I mean, we've been lucky through the pandemic. DYCD paid on its full contract, regardless of how many were enrolled or attended, but that's not going to last. So it's really more, it's based on the contract number is how much money you get, and then whatever oversight you have that can fall into that.
Can I make a suggestion? And between Amy and Bev, could you both knock your brains together and come up with something for us?
Well, but that's what we're doing right now because we're going to have to vote on it.
Yeah, no, it looks
Tonight.
good, Courtney, what you're putting together. It makes much more sense, and it makes me feel better that, a city person will look at it and say, oh, they want pre-pandemic, great, we'll go back to a budget that was 2
Sure.
years ago.
Knock off a couple $100,000.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, stick the word enhanced in between providing and funding.
Well, I've got it down below, but I'm wondering if provide, I'm wondering if it actually should go up top. Funding for youth, and rather than the heightened need for the programs-based funds, whether this is just something sufficient, we should just go here. Boy, this is really watching the sausage get made in real time. Mark, I have newfound respect for all the times you did this on full board.
I'll laugh a minute.
I'm a little bit concerned about the word enhance, Mark.
Yeah, that's my way of saying don't cut it. If
I know. I tend towards appropriate. Enhance makes it make it look a little bit better, but that's just my.
I
additional
think the word's increased.
increase. There you go.
Okay.
Give us more.
Richmond hours needed to ensure that any, what phrase did we want to use here? Any cost of living, but that wasn't right. Beverly, you had another.
You've got it right there, increase in cost.
That's it. I'd leave it there.
Sure, but ensure that any, provide the purchasing power needed to cover, to, it can't be to ensure that we need something else here. Provide increased funding for DYCD programs sufficient to provide the purchasing power needed to cover, bear.
Cover is probably
Cover?
the right word.
Okay. For community programming, right?
Yep.
Any chance we could throw in Sonic Beacon, Cornerstone, and the
Yeah,
other one?
well, that's what I'm wondering, whether we should call them out rather than just,
If you're
Et cetera, et
calling them out, then summer rising is not the right word. If you
That's
want to include summer rising so that we think about next year providing free summer school for all children, then you have to leave it and you'd have to put, you can put Compass and Sonic where.
what if we just including any summer school initiatives, right? Academic summer initiatives.
No, why don't you say including after school and the Summer Rising Initiative? That way you'll get both, right?
No, you don't get both when it comes to community centers. You get both when it comes to schools.
That's
Okay.
why I'm wondering, but instead of calling it Summer Rising, in case it comes up in another form, can we, Summer Rising's intent was to include the academic component, and perhaps any summer academic programming will give us the cover to talk to whatever we need to.
I think you can leave summer rising because it's still what they're using, but maybe after school programming, that's where we can put Compass and Sonic, and it's fine.
Okay.
In parentheses,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
because it is after school and camp programming.
Yeah.
Would include Cornerstone.
Cornerstone and Beacon could be added into that also, sure.
Sorry. Okay, sorry, hang on. All right, hang on. And then and then include all of these other ones too, yes? Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Sonic is SONYC, and it's all capital.
What'd you say?
SNYC.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it.
I was like, this isn't right, hang on. Brain is clicking in, 1 second. There we go, and then any other program. But
Just
then we
put
don't
an
need
O between the N and the S. Yep. There you go. And then Compass is the last one.
There we go.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. How do we feel about this?
Looks good.
Okay. Okay. Number 3, provide funding for increased school staffing. And then we've also put several things into this bucket as well. Additional teachers, literacy specialists, social workers, and school psychologists, nurses, school safety agents, and crossing guards.
My only concern there is that by lumping all those categories together, we kind of lose the punch. There is an initiative already with respect to psychologists, so I don't really know after the pandemic how well we're doing with that. There was an effort last year to increase nursing presence because there was a shameful lack of nurses in an awful lot of schools, including in our district. And putting them into the same category as school safety agents, which I agree with, but is, I think, a different priority. I just don't know what you think about whether we dilute it too much by doing that.
So here would be my argument, and I'm open to discussion, but my argument would be, since we've been given the pretty clear directive that only a few things are making it to the top, I hesitate to choose between so many things that I think are important, and I would rather have it as one item so that we can give visibility to it and really emphasize that it's the schools that need all these things, and then we can talk to it as well throughout the year.
Does it
Okay.
make,
All of these pieces are elements that multiple stakeholders mentioned in all of the conversations.
does it make sense to distinguish between items that fall into the school budget itself and come in the allocation that we're hoping is sustained at 100% of fair student funding, and those items which are centrally funded by the DOE, where even if the school budget is maintained, you don't get them unless the school is awarded those assets by the DOE Central. And it seems to me that the psychologists, the social workers, the teachers, and the literary specialists are part of this individual school budget. And nurses, the safety agents, and the crossing guards aren't.
Mhm.
So there's one argument for distinguishing between them. I mean, you could even say that the school-based items belong up in number 1, as this will permit schools to increase funding for, and then list those positions. While you could use a separate one for the items that the school can't buy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Bev's thinking about this, because I do think that this is like the biggest budget item we're asking for. It's one of the biggest budget items in the whole city. So it's fine to take 2 lines on something that's such an important and such a big ask. I'm sorry, I have both my phone and my computer going. The computer's not working very well. The phone's the backup.
You're fine. Bev, which category do nurses and school psychologists fall into? I think you're muted.
I know that the nurses are assigned from DOE Central. I think the psychologists aren't, but not too many schools can afford them.
And that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
But most schools that have psychologists, it can come out of their Galaxy budget, but it can also come as like a bonus psychologist through other programming where it's funded outside of the school budget, where most of them come from, because nobody's got like an extra salary in their Galaxy budget.
Right.
I just want to make sure that when we put this up there, that I added the will among other critical needs just because it's not the only
Right.
reason, but
And maybe since we're putting all of this in that one boat, we should say at a minimum maintaining, or at, sort of, so maintaining the current level is sort of like the floor, not the ceiling.
you mean at a minimum maintaining all CB7s at 100%.
Yes.
Actually, the way I would phrase that is funding all CB7 schools at least at 100% of fair student funding.
Okay, agreed.
Okay. And then what do we want to do with number 3 now? Provide funding for, what's the best way to phrase it now that we've separated out for, given the kind of multitude of ways that these positions can be covered?
Are they school support staffing?
Yeah.
Maybe provide something about centrally provided funds needs to probably be there.
Well, they'll understand where the money comes from. I think from our perspective as a community, we want to say, we want X. So we want one nurse and adequate school safety agents and so forth in every school. So
I don't want to put that specificity in here though, because for example, some of the schools, they may have a school safety agent, but they have 2 entrances because they're a co-located facility. And so I don't want to provide that specificity. I just want to ensure that the schools can ask for what they feel they need to, what is necessary for their needs.
What about just saying something, provide funding for increased medical and safety school support staff?
I like that, but then you could do an EG, that's right.
I think you should say mental health also. It's a big issue.
Well, social workers are in the first one.
Yeah, it's up here. Right there.
Okay.
Agreed. It's number 1.
I see everything from the inside, so I could give a lecture on all the waste and the misuse of money.
that'll be next month's meeting.
Okay, are we feeling okay with number 3 now?
Looks good.
Yep.
And I agree. I think it allows a little more focus on that when they're not all lumped together. So, okay. 4, ongoing training for those who work with students, e.g. the social emotional training for teachers, principals, administrators, and any adults in contact with students, training for teachers and staff on the new curriculum, professional development for teachers at all levels on the design and use of formative assessments to identify and track improvement in student skills deficits incurred during the pandemic year.
So is the idea here that we have guidance, or that everybody has a benchmark to assess the learning gap from the pandemic year and then be able to address it? Is that what's going on?
I actually think it's bigger than that. So some of the new plans that have been rolled out, both curricula and professional development, all those things, making sure that the school staff actually are trained up on them and know how to implement them since they're brand new. And then the piece for the professional development on those formative assessments. This is really the training, and this is really the training piece, given how much they're rolling out that's new.
Courtney, I have a grammar. I don't know where the other parenthesis ends. It doesn't end anywhere, so I
It
wasn't
doesn't
sure.
end. It's endless.
Okay.
I think right there.
But the other piece of this is, I don't really know. I mean, teachers can do some of this, but teachers, when they have a full class, cannot do a thorough, formative, socio-emotional assessment on every kid. So I think there also has to be a piece somewhere in here about, and I think it links back to what Audrey was saying, the mental health piece. So it's not only that they're getting trained and they're doing assessments, but the next step is, what are they doing for those children that they identify have issues? Which I think is actually the bigger problem than getting the staff trained. Is what do you do with a kid that then has issues? What supports can the school give them? Or are there social workers in their school to actually meet with them? Things like that.
Question,
Okay.
are we, go ahead.
I just was going to sort of elevate some of what Amy just said there, because I think that to me is like the most valuable and important part, that we see that students are getting the social, emotional, mental health services they need. The assessments, listen, they're requiring them. They're just going to roll them out. I think like ending on that sentence is a real deficit thinking, right? It's saying all of our kids are in deficit. It's just not a nice way to end, right? Like that's not what we want to highlight. Instead, we would like to highlight what we can do for our students and what can be positive. So I honestly think that the PD for the assessments is happening, like they're making them do the assessments, but PD for other mental health and social emotional things probably need more funding than they're currently receiving. So it's not changing it, just changing the emphasis in the bullet point.
I also think that the point you made, Courtney, that in fact they're rolling out so many new things is important to include somewhere in this bullet, because that underscores why we think it's important.
So here's kind of, hang on, well, let me not mess with the version we have. When I look at this one, I see three pieces, but fundamentally the way I am thinking about this bullet is, this is the training piece. If we're actually talking about what the kids are getting, that's in number one. And if we want to put more language around that, we should put that in number one. But this one is training. So for example, the social emotional training, right, that we are talking about, they still need the training. They need the training on the new curriculum. And they now also need the development on the design and use of those assessments. But this is a training piece for the teachers, not the what are our students need and what are they getting. Does that make sense?
It does, Courtney, but I'm going to be really frank to some degree. Whether they get the training or not, it doesn't change the fact that there are children sitting in their classroom who need support. So they get the training. What's the next step for the actual child? In my world, it's DOE's responsibility to lay this out, because this is the initiative they've been given. But it's also, how do the kids get what they need from this, and those that don't, how are they being identified and supported? And it's not about number one, because that doesn't really hit the point of what we're saying. So now you have this training. And by the way, the new curriculum for most elementary schools has been in it for 2 years. It's middle school and high school who have not used this curriculum yet. So they've had this training and real work with it. And I just don't want us to lose sight of the child who now has, and I don't think deficit's a terrible word, there's better words, but there are serious socio-emotional and academic issues with our kids at this point, because they missed 1.5 years of school, many of them. So
right, and I'm not arguing that. I'm just arguing, I'm arguing, I think, the logistics of, if we're throwing a piece in here about identifying a piece that is about, we need to make sure we're identifying the kids and getting them the service. That feels different to me than this bullet. So I'm not arguing that we shouldn't put it. I'm just saying it feels like apples and oranges in this bullet.
But it's not
In
when
this
you
item.
say identify and track improvement. Improvement's probably not the word, but identify and track students so that the appropriate services are provided.
Okay.
If that makes sense to everyone else. I just don't
Yeah.
want our kids to get lost.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. So I understand. I now understand what you were asking for. Does this get us,
I think that's good.
I like that a lot. That's much better. And it hits two different needs.
and it doesn't say deficit.
No.
Okay. Excellent.
Courtney, the last phrase really, these are deficits that have been there for years, not just because of pandemic.
Absolutely, Blanche.
Yeah.
Number 5, implement a new walk-in model program co-created with the children served and housed in NYCHA facilities and other community storefronts that are both familiar and convenient to local youth.
I'm a little confused. I don't understand what this is.
So
Why was this put here?
So this came from one of the discussions, and the argument was that there used to be a lot of, sorry, this should probably say after school. There used to be some more walk-in programming, especially cited in the NYCHA facilities, and it went away. It got cut and it never came back. And so one of the in the discussions, the suggestion was it was a need, especially in these locations, that would be more likely for kids to in those, especially in the NYCHA communities, to use.
So I'm going to give you context to that because that's not 100% accurate of what actually happened. When, especially in our district, DYCD used to not give money to our NYCHA sites because our mean income was too high. 12 years ago, it was decided that they were not going to look at the mean income and that they were going to start supporting NYCHA facilities and give them DYCD money. So once that happens, all of those walk-in models that you're saying became DYCD programs. So it's kind of, to me, this is walking a fine line between saying you want this, but that means cutting DYCD funding that used to go to these places and they could never cover their costs. We used to be one of those at Children's Aid at Fred Doug. So we have to, I think we have to be careful in what it is because it's knocking into the DYCD and the programs that they've put into those facilities for the purpose of actually funding them and keeping them alive.
Mm.
There's no attendance policy. Kids can come and go as they want, in the sense of coming, the older kids do come and go as they want, but the model actually disappeared about 15 years ago of walk-in model. The only walk-in models in most NYCHA sites at this point are senior citizen centers because the other sites have also put early childhood into those storefronts if they don't have after school.
Well, okay. Given that, and honestly, again, I think it is, if it's represented in the DNS, I don't think it needs to be a budget request item. I think we can take it out and we can talk to it as long as it's in the DNS. So given that, I would say, and our need to keep this list curated, shall we say, I would be open to taking it out, and we'll just put the focus elsewhere. Bev, what do you think?
I agree.
Okay. Blanche, you comfortable with that?
Fine, that's fine.
Okay. Hey, our list is getting shorter. The budget committee is going to love us. Okay. Now number 5, funding to support the virtual learning infrastructure developed during the pandemic to supplement in-person learning and make new resources available to schools on an ongoing basis. The context here was that a lot of the feedback was that some of the programming had been silver lining, and that there were a lot of benefits and they shouldn't get lost even as we moved back to in-person and going forward.
I like it. It's a little like high level, like we didn't put anything too specific in there, but I agree with Courtney. We all want some silver lining to come out of all of this, right? There is some benefits. So each school would kind of dial it up specifically differently.
For what works for them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 6, funding to support the district's dual language schools and language enrichment program.
I'm speaking again, if that's
Go
okay.
for it. No, go for it. Welcome.
6 and 7 were 2 separate line items, and in the DNS they were actually lumped with 3K as well, and 3K fell off the list. And my greater concern, that's capital though, with the 3K. But 3K needs funding, right? It's not all capital. So I was wondering if we could collapse 6 and 7 and add 3K to it. Like in the document, the DNS, they were all under one heading. I feel like.
So Beverly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the piece that's in capital still needs to stay in capital because it is a capital item, because it is a facility item.
Yeah.
It doesn't preclude us collapsing 6 and 7, I think, and adding in just kind of a more overarching support for 3K programming in our district.
I think we need it in both places because
Okay.
it has both capital and expense ramifications.
great.
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
Do you want, I'll read you the language that's in the district needs statement, if you want to just.
Yeah,
read.
I'm just trying to figure out what the overarching, how should we frame it?
So on this one, and it's not the greatest accuracy, but it says ensure funding availability to expand tested pilot initiatives to serve additional students. Isn't really all that concise either, to be honest.
You're trying to find some way to bind together things that
Correct.
Exactly.
really,
I hear you.
like items. You know, we did
Or
get rid of
new,
one.
they're like new or expanded
We did
education
get rid-
programs.
We did get rid of one item, so we could just put the 3K one in separately and maybe at a higher level than the others.
Except, I mean, I wouldn't even put these honestly on the district needs statement, but someone wants them. Like,
It came from it came from talking to the people in the
the dual
school.
language advocates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I know where it came from, but I don't know if it's to be elevated. Like, I feel like those two are very similar, right? Like, they're specific courses, we're asking for funding for them. So to me, I would definitely collapse them together. And 3K could be standalone, or could be, they are all expanded education programs.
We probably need, does it need to be U3K? Yeah.
Yeah.
Dual language program. Okay. So good.
Yeah,
That's a good ad. I like that. I like that having it in both places. Thank you, Kristen. I like that.
thank you. Yeah, it's an expensive one too. That's why I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's just hidden. It's down here at the bottom.
Can I suggest that instead of the district's expanded education, I would say the expansion of the district's programs, because
That's better.
Yep. Great. All right, capital. So this piece is probably one of the few things that is nearly identical to what was on last year too, with a couple of changes. So just ensuring the ongoing supplies piece.
I would just add, if we could, for schools and city contracted youth and family programs, because many of the DYCD programs rely heavily on DYCD giving them PPE.
That's great. So say that again, that language, we want it up here, right?
No, I was gonna put it on the bottom where for the end of your sentence, for schools and for city funded family and youth, whatever programs.
the problem here is that supplies and maintenance are not capitally eligible. The construction is. So we have to do something about the PPE and move it up into expense.
Oh,
I think that's right.
okay.
The upgrades to facilities are certainly capital.
So this can stay.
Yeah.
Dev, what about the air purifiers? Is
Yeah, what?
If we buy enough of them, is it capital or?
If you buy them as part of a system, you could probably get away with it as capital, but it's kind of gray.
Yeah.
Or
In our
air
building,
purifiers / ventilation. Puts
Yeah.
it in like that bigger capital bucket.
in our building, it's an
Um,
appliance, excuse me, in our
Guys.
building, it's an appliance like an air conditioner. It's not capital.
There is a capital you can do for ventilation systems, upgrading ventilation systems for rooms that have like lunch rooms, auditoriums, gymnasiums. Those are all major capital improvements. And a lot of these systems are as old as the building. So you can put various pieces of equipment into new mechanical systems, new mechanical units. You can, if you don't have room for MERVs, 13 or 16 or whatever filters you want, you can create that room, and that's capital. So you have a lot of good projects there that are going to perform a lot better than air purifiers and going to last a lot longer. We're doing this for CUNY on a large scale.
I think like the MLK building, that's ventilation systems, right? Because it's so
Oh, yeah.
Ventilation systems.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's big dollars, and sometimes it's an add-on to the existing system. But I can tell you that you're not getting out of any of these spaces for less than $35,000, probably more like 50 to 100.
Can I suggest we do air purification / ventilation systems? Because then it's all systems, it's all capital.
All right.
Yeah, if they then decide, yeah, that works for me.
You got to get rid of the other piece and put it up above somewhere. Because I think it's important, but it's.
Where do we want to put it?
What piece are you talking about, Bev?
The supplies and materials.
Yeah, for sure.
For this here.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about order in a second. I'm just making sure it lives somewhere. And then we now think this can all
city funded.
I'm fixing it. I'm fixing it. All right. How do we feel?
I'm gonna talk again. Sorry, I'm not trying to push this budget too high, but one thing that was on your old district needs statement that dropped off, that I think has dropped off the burner citywide, was making schools more handicap accessible.
Oh, yeah.
SCA did sort of a little like dog and pony show tour around the city about that. And then COVID hit and it kind of dropped off the burner. So maybe.
Yeah.
Here's the thing,
And
though.
you know what?
Bev had mentioned earlier in the meeting that one of the criteria, and Courtney did too, that one of the criteria we're trying to go for is not to make priorities out of, since there are so few priorities that are going to get through to the top 20, not to make a priority of something that's going to happen anyway. And there's a good, I forget whether the number, you probably know, 75 million strikes me as.
There's money allocated to it.
Yeah. So the money's already been allocated. And so in our district, it's not so much whether there's money, but whether we get any of it. And so I wonder if that might sort of lessen the need for it to be, or it certainly wouldn't be the higher priority because it's already been funded. But maybe we want to put a placekeeper in just so we have something to talk about. I don't know. That's my reaction.
Mark,
Yeah, I don't want to bloat this if it's beyond what it should be.
Okay, Mark, what is the amount that they put in? You said?
I have 75 million in my head and I have 150 million in my head, and I'm not sure where their number came from.
That comes down to $3 million and change a district, which if you're lucky, gets you one school in a district.
Well, remember that the goal was 1/3 of the schools.
They need a calculator.
I don't doubt it.
A good calculator. But what I was going to say is on this item, what you could also put in bottle fillers. They put some in, they need to keep doing it.
All right, well, so hang on, we've got two separate issues happening.
Yeah.
You want to put bottle fillers in the capital item, and then let's go back to the accessibility question.
I mean, those are also accessible too. You get your accessibility and your bottle fillers. I talked about this extensively in my school. So you get a drinking fountain that's also a bottle filler, and it's all accessible. And you got a lot of things wrapped into one piece of equipment and one capital cost. And it's the delta between just a straight fountain and fountain with the bottle filler, very different. And it also helps kids stay hydrated. Not a bad idea.
So do we want to put I mean, honestly, should we?
Couldn't it go with like the water faucets to support hand washing? That's where you were going initially, Courtney, right? You saw this.
Yeah, but I think are we talking about a separate item about accessibility? Yeah. That is my question.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, my comment is the automatic faucets also are, there are two ways of doing it. And one of them is, it's kind of funny. One of them is you use a battery powered model, and once the batteries go, and the custodians don't have the batteries, they don't work anymore. And then there's another model where you actually hardwire them. So that's a different item too. Maybe I'm getting into the weeds, but I just want to point it out.
So I guess my question is, do we want to put an item in that is, do we want to reinsert our accessibility item from last year?
I'm just raised it. I'm not like married.
No,
to it.
I'm not. No,
I think we could. I think we are owed a fourth capital item.
Okay. all right, Kristen, can you read the language for me?
Yeah, I
From
have
last
like
year?
the whole long paragraph from last year.
We should have it in,
I can read like the bullet point first sentence is make at least 1/3 of District 3 elementary and middle schools handicapped accessible by the end of the 2020-2024 capital
hang on
plan.
1 second. But there should be an item, we should have had an item in our budget request from last year, did we not? Not from the DNS. Mark and Beverly and Blanche, this is what a question do we
I'll look
have?
for it. I'll look for it.
I don't have that language up in this document right now.
I think you have to say obtain funding, because the design and the construction is not going to be done in 2 or 3 years. That's the reality of it.
Yep, you're right. That's a long-term plan.
But to secure the funding, the commitments, that's one thing, and to begin the design and establish a firm construction schedule.
And to select what school.
Oh, God. You know, the problem here is District 3 and CB7 don't overlap.
Perfectly, right. So
Not at all. So I don't know if we, you know, how do we bridge that one? Or do we just pass on it?
Yeah, with the district needs statement I have in front of me referenced District 3 because we have no schools that are not in District 3, and it's a little crummy to be like only the schools in D7, right?
Yeah, I know. This is my question.
So the language from last year said District 3, so I think it's fine to stick with that. But I'm biased, you know, my heart's a District 3, so.
okay, so I'm fine putting in the item from last year. It strikes me as still relevant, but I need that language. So I can either put a placeholder in and I'll go grab it later and we can just vote on it. Are we?
Yeah, I'll email it to you right now from last year anyway.
Okay.
The thing is, when you do these things, you end up with the headline, and then you end up on the little box below, you put in a paragraph on why it is you think it's a good budget priority and so forth. So you'll need that for each of these things. For some reason, I can't. Can you? When we unshare the screen, I can give you the link, or I can email it to you. But you'll need that for each one of these things.
Yeah. Okay. I think I have it in my email, but I wouldn't complain about you putting it at the top of my email again. Let's put it that way. All right, we're gonna put this one in. I'm just putting in accessibility here so we know what we're talking about.
I just emailed it.
Okay, perfect. And then we've got the funding for the schools selected as new U3K sites to ensure that they are built out to the degree they need to be for the littles.
Yeah, I'm going to put one caveat here, is that while a lot of our schools have space at the moment this year and maybe next year, if things recover at all, by the time we have the funding and putting this into a lot of the schools, it actually may create an overcrowding situation if people come back to the city. So we have to be very careful as to how we phrase this, or we create problems for ourselves in the future down the line. Because, you know, for example, the school that I am still at, Kristen was at, we were actually unable to accommodate any more than one pre-K at all. And that was a great disruption to the school. And there's no place to pre 3K because we can't even get the pre-Ks in yet, even with you know, a 10 or 15% drop in enrollment. So this is a real problem, and I think a lot of the southern part of the district still hasn't been able to accommodate its pre-Ks, much less 3Ks. So we really have to be careful as how this is phrased. So I think maybe where space is available, and not let this just be something as an argument to say we want 3K and we don't care what else happens.
But this piece specifically is just saying that for those schools selected as new sites, we need to ensure the funding to make sure they have the facilities.
For districts
facilities
selected as new
reflect the
3K.
need.
I mean, the extension of this is they haven't finished building out the pre-K system yet. The truth be known, in a lot of our districts.
Listen, I agree. I think the point here is just that if they're going to designate a school a 3K site, we want to make sure that that school has the funds it needs to make sure that it's an appropriate facility for the 3-year-olds. That's all.
Courtney, could you, Courtney, let me jump in for a second. Courtney, to address Ira's point, and I don't think it does any damage to the overall thought.
Yeah.
At the end of number 3, could it be written such as to suitable to serve the needs of the city's youngest learners without compromising educational opportunities for existing students?
That's a good phrase.
Yeah. Without compromising, say it again.
Educational opportunities for existing students.
I mean, in all deference to Kristen, a lot of sins were hidden away in the last rezoning, hoping that, I mean, for example, with the PS 84.
But I also think there are schools that definitely want 3K, and that would help too.
Yeah, but I'm also saying there's schools that would like pre-K as well. I mean,
Yes.
for example, you know, there's a demand for pre-K at 9. There always has been, and they cut the and in creating the pre-K at 9, for example, this is a school. I'm just using this as school because I'm very familiar with it. We lost half of our pre-K seats because we had 2 half-day pre-Ks. We lost half the seats in creating the universal pre-K.
Does it make sense here to say that this is for both pre-K and U3K?
I think that's a fair way of phrasing it. It's a very fair way of phrasing it.
So we just
Yeah,
add,
I mean, they often think about moving the pre-K sites around. That's kind of what you're getting at, Ira, like with 84. There's definitely always an appetite for, DOE feels like it's one of the few things they can physically move, so they're very game to move them.
And I think that's the least movable, but I won't go there.
Right, but I do know they are hot to move them, right? And you could toss them in here. It's at either rate, they need specific build outs for 3K and pre-K sites.
And pre-K.
Yeah, they're actually pre-K, 3K, and K all have specific needs.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Great. Okay. And 4 here on capital is funding for continued renovations of Bloomingdale branch. It includes 2 pieces, the children's area on the upper floor and the basement as well.
Courtney, I want to make a distinction between what we need on the upper floors and what may be needed on the basement. The upper floors is not renovation, it's refurbishing. We're talking about painting, maybe carpeting, lighting. To me, that's refurbishing.
Okay.
The basement is a complete design review of how the space can be used. So I think the two should not be lumped together.
Okay.
And I even
Well-
wonder if we're talking about the refurbishing aspect, and Beverly, you can help here. Is refurbishing capital or expense? You're talking about painting and
Well,
putting in.
it's painting, it's furniture, it's a whole range of things. So I think you could
What's that?
probably say that it's a capital body of work. I do think you could say instead of repurposing, though, you should say reconstruction of the basement.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But I think
Okay.
the two. Now the word you used was what? What? Instead of reconstruction.
Okay, so now it reads funding for continued renovations of the New York Public Library Bloomingdale branch, including refurbishment of the children's area on the upper floor and reconstruction of the facility's basement to facilitate a broad and flexible community purpose.
Okay, it's not just the children's area. That upper floor has community rooms for community use. And we have done it. CB7 wanted to rent or avail itself of a meeting room for a meeting. That's where the room is. The various program activities that the library runs, those classrooms are up on the second floor.
Okay,
So it's not
So-
just the children's area.
so I've rewritten it to be including refurbishment of the upper floor, and then in parentheses, children's, well, let's do this.
To include the children's area,
With children's area,
public rooms,
children's area and community rooms.
class. Yeah, okay, community rooms.
Okay, and reconstruction of the facility's basement to facilitate a broad and flexible community purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How do we feel about the order? Does, are people comfortable? If you have anything you'd like to raise about the order,
I would
let's
like
have
to
that
read
discussion.
item number 4, the library, to higher than 4. Number 1, it's been around for so long. We've talked about it. We've submitted it a number of times. And number 2, I think Bloomingdale gets short shrift, perhaps because it's in the very northern area, northern sector of our catchment area. And I think it has just gotten left out of things in the scheme of upgrading our 3 or 4 libraries. So I would like to move item number 4 higher. And I think the potential for use of the reconstruction in the basement facility, there are just enormous possibilities there for use that I think the community needs. And I'm not impartial to Bloomingdale Library.
I think it makes sense to move the library up. I don't know exactly where, like in my mind, 2 or 3, but the accessibility, one I do think we could put down as 4 because we feel like, move it down in ranking because we feel like it has some legs already.
That was actually exactly the question I was going to ask, Bev, which is if we put a lens of, and Mark, and if we put a lens of what do, I keep thinking about that. What are the things that are likely to get funded without our advocacy and what are those things that could really use our advocacy. If we put that lens over this, does that help dictate some of the movement here?
Well, these will all be sent to the district, so they'll all be visible. They may just not be on our formal
Correct.
list of 20. I think you could swap out 2 and 4.
I agree, and that reason that it's already been funded in one sense is a perfect example of why we think it's important, but has a different ranking.
I mean, but the truth is, well, putting it in 4 is not a bad thing. I mean, the truth is it's vastly underfunded, and it has, how can I say, being very cynical here, limited curb appeal, because you spend a lot of money on an elevator that generally doesn't get used except by the people who need to use the elevator.
What are you talking about there, Ira?
What?
When
The
you say
accessibility.
The
That's actually
accessibility.
interesting. I can't access it right now because of the screen sharing, but I actually, as part of this process, did go through the site and pull every school in our district in terms of what the rating was on the accessibility. So I do have that somewhere, and I can share it with everyone at some point. I just can't right at this second.
The reality of it is that some of the accessibility surveys that have been done are actually not. I can tell you how the surveys are done in the schools, and you can have identical buildings that get different ratings. So, for example, 76, 84, 9 are all the same building, and they all have the same ramp. And I know that the ramps are not accessible, but in some buildings they claim to be accessible. It's a matter of how can I put it? The personnel that are sent out to do the surveys, and how can I put it? The surveys are done on an annual basis, pretty much by the pound. You get somebody for half a day or a day, and they're looking for the big things. They're not getting into the fine points of accessibility. And the accessibility regulations have changed over the years, with each version of ADA and each version of 504 being 504 is the historic, and an ADA this year and ADA that year, and different ANSI versions. I'm going to bore you with the leads. So the thing about the accessibility is not all the weeds. It's really the big issues. Do we have the elevators? Can people get into the public assembly spaces? Can they get into the bathrooms? Can they get into each classroom? Probably not. Doors need to be changed, and it gets into, it's a lot more complicated than what somebody can do in a half-day run through in a building. But it just takes a lot of money to get the first floor accessible and to get you to the second floor and the third floor. And the dollars are very big, and the disruptions to the schools are huge. And I don't want to, I'm not underestimating it. I do this. I've done this work, or I've watched people do it professionally. So I think you gotta, this is like making the subway system accessible. It's not as simple as it looks. How long did it take to do 96th Street? How long did it take to do 72nd Street? Years.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, all right. Knowing that having it in means we can advocate for things as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So I'm happy that we have it in. Do we feel okay? Let's go back to the top. Let's start with expense. Do we feel okay about the order in which we have our items here?
I would elevate the training in some way. I didn't think through what would have to move down that.
Item 2. Item 2, Kirsten.
2 or 3. I don't want to bump DYCD if we feel like that's something that needs to really be highlighted.
I also deeply don't want to bump nurses. I don't want to bump that support staff is my issue. I agree they're both important. I mean, The nursing
Alright.
shortage was such an issue, and the crossing guards we were dealing with all and are going to continue to be in anyway.
I think the order's pretty good. I just think that our co-chairs are going to have a bit of a job advocating to make sure that at least 4 of them get into the top 20.
I think that's the answer. Is we're going to. Is it Blanche and I are going to be talking a lot?
That's unusual. Okay.
Okay. Is there, knowing that part of this is the, yes, I agree, Mark, that's helpful. Does anything else look egregiously, knowing that probably what we're advocating for is the things at the top of the list? Anything else look out of?
About expense, the entire thing.
We're in the expenses. Anything else that someone would like to flag?
They're all
Discussion?
important. Yeah.
I know, everything. We want everything. Okay.
You do have a couple people in among attendees, so at some point you might,
Thank you. Yes.
maybe you should stop. If you stop
I'm
screen
going to
share,
stop
we can.
screen sharing, and then I'm going to be able to see. Thank you, Mark.
What did we do about the order ranking for capital? I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
So we've got number 1 is upgrade to facilities to support new COVID protocols. Number 2 is funding for the Bloomingdale branch. Number 3 is funding.
Stop. I'm fine.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, I came in late to this discussion, and I apologize. I was actually at 2 parent-teacher sessions for 2 different schools for 2 of my kids this eight. The item where it says dual language, shouldn't we also include ELLs in that line? I mean, I
L or ESL, which or what?
English language learners.
Okay, all right. I was thinking of English as the second language, but ELL is fine.
Whatever term we feel comfortable with, it could be ESL, ELL,
Right.
but I think it's just as important because we do have people who are not in dual language schools
And
who need support. And if you look at the, I'm not going to, sorry. It should be there as well.
here, I just added it.
Sure.
Because you shouldn't just have to be in a dual language school to
Agreed.
get support.
It should be multi-language, frankly.
Okay.
But anyway,
It's in.
I don't have a
Agreed.
problem.
good.
No, agreed.
Okay.
All right. So we do have some members of the public, although 2 of them are Seema. Hi, Seema. Hang on. Sorry. Do we have any other comments from the public? Anyone interested in commenting?
My computer's not behaving itself, so I can't promote anybody. So you'll have to do it
I
for me.
know. I'm allowing them to talk. Oh, I can promote. Hang on. Let's see if it'll let me. Here comes Seema. Okay. Hi, Seema.
Hey, sorry to be late. I also was at a curriculum night.
It was the irony was duly noted when Ira was talking about it. Okay. Hi. Do you have anything now that you are officially a panelist? Any comments or anything you wanna say? Oh,
Sorry,
everything we've been talking about. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, not at all. I'm having a little bit of trouble sort of getting up to speed just because you guys were like really in the weeds there. So I'm just gonna defer, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, given that and knowing that I've got one piece in here under the capital that I'm going to have to insert language in after we are done, shall we vote on approving this list to send to steering? Okay.
Sure.
All right. Mark,
I
is the way to
second.
do this you second, thank you. Mark, is the way to do this to just the vote in favor, vote opposed, abstain?
Yeah,
That's
basically
simple.
treat it like a resolution.
It's just like a resolution, okay.
Yeah, and again, my computer's not behaving itself, so you'll have to do the count.
Fine. Okay, all in favor of approving this order of budget request?
Blanche's hand is up. So
Okay, I see 2 physical hands and 6 virtual hands. Kristen and Natasha, okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 physical hands. So I've got 8 in favor.
you have my hand, my whatever.
I'm counting your hands, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Can everyone lower their hands, virtual and otherwise? I'm gonna do it too, as she says, and then I don't lower my own hand. Okay, any opposed? All opposed? Okay, I don't see any virtual nor any physical. Abstaining? I don't see any virtual or physical, and for cause. Okay. So that was 8. I have it as 8 in favor, 0, 0, 0. Okay. The order passes for budget request. Thank you guys. Appreciate
Was
it.
there an abstention?
No, we had 0. I didn't see any abstentions.
Okay, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We had
9.
some missing hands. This is true in the number.
I think
But we
Amy had
had
to leave the
8.
meeting.
I was
Yeah,
in
and-
twice because I'm on the phone and on the computer.
Okay.
No, yeah.
I didn't raise my hand twice, just if she's looking at the total number of panelists. Yeah.
I think it's also because Amy, so, okay. And we have 8 votes, so that's what we needed for quorum. Okay, so Blanche, do we want to move to new business? Blanche,
What was your last comment there? I'm sorry.
did we want to move to new business?
Sure. New business. You want to do the minutes, or you want me to do?
Sure.
New-
So we're
new
going to be
business.
sending out 2 pieces. We're going to be sending out an updated schedule with assignments for minute taking. Again, I'd like to thank Mark for stepping up at the very last second this evening to do the minutes. We'll send out an updated schedule. And so just please email me if there's a month you know you will miss or cannot do minutes, because once we send out the schedule, I'd really like to not revise it a million times since nobody loves that. So just let me know if you have any firm calendar blocks. Other than that, we'll send out the schedule. And then if you have a month and it's assigned to you and it doesn't work at the last second, just please try and scope around and see if there's someone who you can switch with. So stand by with bated breath for that updated schedule. I know everyone loves the minutes. So
Can you give us just the overview? Is it usually like the 4th Thursday or something like that? What's the
It's
Third.
always third
the
Thursday.
3rd Thursday? Okay.
we had a weird month this month because when we were trying to finagle in person, but yes. And I noticed today that the website calendar is not updated for October, which always makes it challenging for me, and members of the public. So we'll try and figure that out. But that is just the rule of thumb.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, new business. I guess we're thinking ahead to next month. And I had a suggestion for programming, which would be new, but not quite. Last year, April, just as the pandemic hit, the mayor's office had established. I just give you my overall concern is crime in the area. I don't think a day or certainly a week can go by unless we hear a horror tale. A lot of it would be young people, not all of it. We do know that the pattern is people come into the area, do their dire deeds and leave. Last year, April, the mayor had established in each precinct in the area, I don't remember the exact name, but it was out of the precincts, a group of officers with a special responsibility for community outreach, particularly for the difficult populations. And just as we were about to have it was last year, April, our group of officers come in to give us an overview of what was happening in the area. Pandemic hit and we all went on hiatus. And I'm suggesting that for next month, I can reestablish connection with that group and see if they're available to us and can fill us in on patterns, trends, what they as a group can do or are doing if this is an interest of the committee. This came out of my contact is in the 24th precinct. So the question is, how does that sound as a new item of business?
I know that the 24th precinct is trying to reconstitute its community council, or add one that has a specific leadership council for the precinct commander. I'm just not sure, other than children being victims of these crimes, how that relates to this committee as opposed to another. Although I'm hard pressed to say where it would go.
When you say another, what other committee would you suggest that it might be appropriate for?
Yeah, it's hard. We don't have a public safety committee. That's the thing.
Or Health and Human Services. I'm not sure what the auspice of each committee is. That's just a title.
I would like to say that I do think that Blanche's idea is a good one, and not just the 24th precinct, but also the 20th precinct should be reached out to to find out what they're doing, because it's not just a problem with children being victims of these crimes, but also sometimes actually being the perpetrators of certain crimes. And I'd like to know what's been happening pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, and what they expect now going forward.
Okay.
Yep.
I think I missed it, Blanche. Can you just clarify what it is? And also, everyone keeps mentioning children are victims of these crimes, but
No.
I'm not aware of it being higher for kids.
No, it's not children are victims. It's
More youth.
young people are perpetrators. I mean, just this week, that murder we had in Morningside Park, the young man confessed to the murder that was committed when he was 14. This was a Barnard student.
Correct. I know.
earlier this week, we had a stabbing at a deli at 94th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a shooting at 105th Street and Columbus Avenue. The week after that, there was another shooting out of Douglas houses. So it's not the children are the victims. It's just that young people are committing these crimes. And we should be aware of it. And I guess the other part of the question is, can the precincts do anything to reach these at-risk youth who are committing the crimes, essentially? And further, there is another unit of the NYPD that deals primarily with crimes committed within housing projects. And that's a special unit. So the whole issue of crime and safety, not that they're perpetrated on children, no.
I tend to agree with Mark that it's not a perfect fit for the work of this committee. Perhaps if we were to do it or ask our colleagues in the HHS committee to join with us on this, it might make more sense.
Okay, any other?
We could do that. Catherine is not here this evening. Otherwise, that would be an easy request to communicate.
Okay. Ira?
Why don't our chairs reach out to Catherine and
we'll reach
propose
out.
that? We've had meetings.
We've had joint ones before. Yep.
You know, for example, from the DA's office, where funding has been made available for this kind of work.
Yep.
Before.
And I think, Mark, to your point, especially if they're getting an update on new initiatives, would be helpful. And we haven't had the precinct with us for a while, so so we'll do that.
I would suggest reaching out to Shelley. I think Catherine has been away.
Yep. No, I understand. Okay. So we'll do that. I also would just encourage anyone who has ideas, maybe right this second, for other topics you think we should be addressing. I also wanted to send us an email if the idea is not, if you want to flesh out the idea, have a little more time. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have actually a new temporary representative at the DOE who I've spoken to a couple of times in the last month or so, and he has offered to join us on a as needed basis. So I suspect especially until a permanent Manhattan rep has been assigned. He's actually currently in charge of the Bronx and Brooklyn and community engagement with community boards. So anyway, he's very nice, and he's offered to come when we want a representative to ask questions and answer what he can. And so we will hopefully be able to use that as a resource. I have a feeling we will be dealing with school issues in months ahead again, as those issues arise. It's just a guess.
Yeah.
It's a theory. Anyway, so I'm glad that we have that contact now, and so he can step in and will help us. So feel free to also forward any questions that you have or that you're hearing from the community ahead of our next meeting. Speaking of the community, any other questions from our attendees? Raise your hand. Sounds like no. Okay. Blanche, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss in new business?
Don't think so. I think we've covered an awful lot tonight in great order. I'm looking at the time, 8:10. I think that's fantastic.
I didn't quite hit Amy's goal of 8 o'clock, and I'm sorry for that. Um,
And we want to thank you again for your usual, as I said to Courtney earlier, you are the essential, quintessential team player.
You're very kind.
Thank you.
yeah, the committee should know that Mark got a phone call very late today with a
Like
lot of
five.
meetings, like phone calls. Anyway, and
No
he
worries.
stepped up.
No
so-
different than what everybody else does. I know, thanks.
Anyway, all right, move to adjourn. It is 8:10.
Woohoo.
Okay,
Second.
thank
Okay. Good night, all.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
All right, how do I get rid of this?